Well, hello everybody. This is meteorologist Andrew Panera with this next Full Throttle Thursday. Once again, I am in the garage, and this is going to be a kind of wet and lubricating kind of episode. We are talking all about oil. This is the lifeblood of your engine, and it is extremely necessary for multiple systems in the car. Starting with the engine, oil is essentially the lifeblood of the whole engine. Without oil, the engine would not work whatsoever. So that's how important oil is. And when you have like a WRX like I have, you have to start putting in some very good oil. You can't just get any kind of like simple, conventional, off-the-shelf Walmart oil. No offense to Walmart. But with the car, I've been experimenting with a couple of different oils. Now, my very first car I ever got, I had a Jeep Cherokee, a 96 Jeep Cherokee. And I started, because it was high mileage, I was using Pennzoil high mileage at that point. So then in my Legacy, I think I started using Mobil 1, because the Legacy, the Jeep had 5W30, and we'll talk about viscosity later in the episode. But 5W30 for that. No, sorry. The Jeep had 10W30. The Legacy had 0W20, and the WRX now has 5W30. That's the manufacturer recommended viscosity. Now you can change that, but I'm going to stick with that because with the climate and the temperatures range that I see, 5W30 seems to be the best for me. Okay, so now we're sticking with 5W30, but there are multiple different brands. There are multiple different tiers, just like vodka. You got your high-end top shelf vodka, then you got your dirt cheap vodka that you can get a 1.75 liter bottle for 15 bucks. So you got a lot of variety. And today we are going to take a look at one particular brand. This is AMSOIL. So now I've watched a couple of videos on AMSOIL, some independent testing of multiple different oils, some that were like, I think were like an ambassador of AMSOIL, it seemed like. But overall, AMSOIL seems to be the top pick for a lot of different engine builders. A lot of different engine builders use AMSOIL. They have special break-in oil. Then they use this AMSOIL 100% synthetic signature series. And then also, we're not just doing the oil today. We have one more thing, gear oil. So usually you don't replace the transmission or the differential fluid that often. Like you can go, say, 30,000 miles without even having to change it. Just keep checking it and make sure it's at the right level. However, with the WRX and the manual transmission, I essentially learned to drive manual with this car. I learned some basics with my friend Mark, who had an older car, but he taught me how to drive manual. And then that's where I started really dailying manual with this car in my series that I have on the channel. But when you're really learning manual, you are very hard on the transmission. So that's where, coming up to 20,000 miles now with the car, I want to make sure that everything is protected. So I was harsh learning manual, going from, say, first to second, grinding the gears. I hear the clunk, clunk, clunk as I'm trying to shift and just learning how to do that. So that's where, even though 20,000 miles is much less than when you would normally replace the transmission fluid, I want to do that now. And that's where, with AMSOIL I'm sticking with, this is AMSOIL Severe Gear, again, 100% synthetic gear lube. Now the other thing too is this is the same oil. Oil still lubricates, but this is 75W90. Really, the higher the number, the thicker the oil. So this is very thick oil. And this also I will be using in the transmission because this is also something called GL5, which in the Subaru manual it says you can substitute out the stock Subaru transmission, manual transmission fluid, which is also 75W90 to this. But this seems to be a little bit better from what I've seen with the stock Subaru transmission fluid. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, which is the gear oil and the engine oil. So we're going to be replacing multiple different lubes throughout the vehicle. So let's take a look. One more thing I forgot too that I got. So this is engine and transmission flush. Now this is going straight into the engine before I do the oil change. And then you're supposed to let this idle for about 15 minutes while this is doing its job. And essentially, this is a detergent that's going to flush out and clean the internals of the engine. Now, this stuff drastically reduces the viscosity or the thickness of the oil, which is essentially what it's designed to do. It's thinning out the oil. It's a detergent, so it's really trying to clean out everything. And then after you idle for 15 minutes, you drain it right out. And because the oil is thinner, it comes out much easier. So it's really bringing out more oil than a normal engine oil flush would have, or no normal engine oil change would have. So that's where I'm going to be trying. I've never actually done an oil flush before. So we're going to try this too, and we'll see how that goes. Now, with this, it's actually very interesting, and I like the packaging for this because in the transmission and the differential, it's kind of hard to get. So that's where here we have these nozzles. With this nozzle, that kind of just, you can stick that in the fill, and this is a squeeze jug. So you can have this kind of like sideways, and normally with a quart of oil, if you put it sideways, you're not getting everything out. But here, I can squeeze it almost like a toothpaste bottle. And then once I start draining it out, I can kind of roll up the bottom of this. So that's where this squeeze bottle of the oil is going to be able to get everything out successfully of the package and into the car. So that's why I also chose this, because these packs look much easier to get the oil out of and into the differential and the transmission. So that is everything that came in the box. And now it looks like it's time to start the oil changes and the oil upgrades. All right, so we're under the car now with the transmission fluid. This is the transmission case. The case is split in half because it's designed to be serviced. Right here, that is the transmission drain plug. That is where I have that T70 right up on there to loosen that up. And then it's going to drain out the transmission fluid. I'm probably going to level the car again, because then right now all the oil is going backwards in the transmission because the car is up on a jack. So what I'm going to do is start draining this, and then I'm going to lower it back down, make sure it drains completely, and then we'll start filling it up. Alright, so I got the drain plug loose. I have the catch pan below it. So let's see if I can do this carefully without making a mess, and you don't want to lose the drain plug in the oil. So let me see here. Let's try this. There it goes. And I still have the drain plug in my hand, so we're good there. There's the stench. Manual, well, this isn't normal manual transmission fluid, but gear lube has an especially bad smell. So we're going to let this drain, and then I'm going to lower it, let it fully drain, and then we'll start filling it up. If you look at the drain plug, there's stuff on there. There's a magnet on the end here that catches any metal shavings. Because with a manual transmission and something called a synchros, there's naturally some metal wear. So this tries to catch any of that with the magnet on there. So we got to clean that off. Also, don't forget, right on here, there's a little gasket. It's always good to replace these gaskets every time you pull out the drain plug, so remember that. Alright, oil is drained. Not sure if you can see inside there. We got some gears showing. Anyway, that's drained. I'm going to put the drain plug back in there, and you want to make sure it's torqued down to spec properly. I have the service manual with the proper torque specifications, so I'm going to make sure that is torqued down properly with that new gasket on there. And I'm not going to show you the engine oil change just because you've seen that already. That plug is right here. There is the engine oil drain plug. So again, take that out, let it drain out, put a new gasket on the bolt here on the plug, tighten it back up, and then for filling. And then we are going to use those squeeze bottles all the way up in here, right on the side of the transmission. I'll see if I can show you. Hard to see at the moment, but there is a little tube up there. And that's the fill plug. So I'm going to fill it up from there. 3.5 quarts, that's what it takes. Alright, I got my torque wrench here set to 52 foot-pounds. And now I'm going to torque this down. Alright, so you kind of see up here, I have one of those quarts. This one's empty, just it was hard to get one-handed. I needed 2 hands. But this I basically just rolled up like a tube of toothpaste, and it fit right into the fill port, right on the side over there. And then I just squeeze the oil into the transmission here. So these AMSOIL bags make it so easy to reach hard to fill spots like the top of the transmission there. So I'm glad they did that, and I'm glad I found it. Alright, so next up on the list here is the oil. Now, it's going to be a little bit different just because I'm not going to be just simply changing the oil. I'm doing this engine and transmission flush. So I'm just doing the engine for this for right now. And essentially what I do is take this bottle and I pour it into the fill port of the oil on the engine. And then I let it idle for 15 minutes. After it idles for 15 minutes, turn it off, and you can drain the oil. This, what it does is it's essentially a detergent. So it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to clean the inside of the engine, and it also reduces the viscosity of the oil, so it's very watery. So that way, it's cleaning, and then it can just pull out all that oil out by making it very watery. And when the oil's all out, then you put fresh oil in, and it is just acting as normal oil, which again, I'm using the Signature Series 5W30 from AMSOIL. So let's see how that goes. All right, so I just did the flush. It says put it in the oil fill, then let it idle for 15 minutes and immediately drain it. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to drain that and we'll see how it looks. Here it goes. Caution, it is still very hot. The access port was saying it is about 150 degrees. But it is very watery, which is kind of the point. I still want to just do this. It's really watery. Which again is kind of the point. Ooh, that's hot, yes. Which is the point of the flush. So now, that's why you want to do this when it's hot. So everything's nice and loose. So now, it's just going to drain. So I'm going to let it drain. I'm going to let this drain however long it takes. This may take longer than normal for a normal oil change, but we'll just let it finish. And when it's finished, I'll tighten that down to spec. And on the oil fill plug, make sure to put a new gasket. Put that in there, and then we'll fill it up. I'll see you at the top of the top side of the engine. All right, back on the top side of the engine now. Don't forget to prime your oil filter. This is the AMSOIL oil filter that I'm trying for the first time. And what you want to do is you want to fill the oil filter up. It's going to absorb oil into the material. So you want to keep filling it until it's just about filled, and then that's when you want to put it inside the engine. Alright, last but not least, the rear differential. I have that right here. We got a drain port at the bottom, and a fill port at the top. And this differential is pretty long. And you got the axles going straight to the wheels. So here, I'm going to break the fill port loose. Then I'm going to break the drain port loose. And these are actually just half-inch sockets, so I don't even need a socket at all. This just goes straight into there. So that's kind of convenient that I don't have to use any sockets. And then we are onto some draining. Now this is very short because this only takes 0.8 quarts between empty and full. So not too much more, and this is going to just about wrap up the work for today. There goes the gear oil. So we'll let that drain. Again, it's a very small amount, 0.8 quarts. And once that drains, we will fill it up again through the top, just basically until it overflows. That's how you know it's full. And I'm going to go clean off here the plugs for the fill plug and the drain plug. So I'll see you back at the bench. Alright, so here we have the fill plug, which looks pretty dry, so that means I don't think it was filled up all the way. And then we have the drain plug. See a little bit of sludge on there. There's actually, again, like the transmission, a magnet. So any little metal shavings, it collects on the magnet, so I gotta just clean that off. And then these are good to go back into the differential. I got that torqued down to the 36 foot-pounds now with the little pack here, which I'm glad I found. Again, these AMSOIL easy pack. So I just basically put the nozzle in and then squeeze the oil 75W90 into the differential until it just starts coming out the fill port. So let me start doing that. All right, well, that was an exciting day. So just to recap, we started with changing out that transmission fluid, or the transaxle technically, but transmission fluid we'll call it. But you put in gear oil instead of standard manual transmission fluid, because the differential is inside of the transmission, so you got to make sure the right stuff is in there. So I used what was recommended, or at least what was specified in the owner's manual by Subaru, so I am still following those guidelines. So we used that, and we got to use the nice little squeeze pack, which made it so much easier. After that, then we did the oil change, or the oil flush first, and then once the flush happened with that very watery oil, which was really cool to see, to know that it's actually trying to flush out everything from inside the engine, then we filled it up with that nice AMSOIL Signature Series. We'll see how that goes. Nice new AMSOIL oil filter, pretty much AMSOIL everything. AMSOIL transmission fluid, and AMSOIL engine oil flush, then an AMSOIL engine oil, and then lastly, you just saw, was the rear differential. We drained that out and put some more of that 75W90 Severe gear from AMSOIL, and it actually, even though it's only about 20,000 miles on the car, the oil coming out was kind of on the darker side. Usually it's supposed to last maybe 30,000 miles or even more, but this was already wearing out, so I'm glad that I did this now all together. So now some fresh lubrication everywhere. When in doubt, lubricate. All right, so that is a wrap for today's video, this next Full Throttle Thursday. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to catch more car videos, feel free to hit the subscribe button below, and then the little bell icon right next to that, so you get notified whenever I upload a video like this, or I go live. More so, I go live with game streaming, but if you're into that, feel free to subscribe as well. Again, thank you all for joining. This is meteorologist Andrew Pinero. Stay safe out there, wear your mask and social distance, have fun while driving while being responsible as well, and I'll see you all in the next video.